What's up, everyone? It's Shaletta. I'm here getting a phone for one of my newly minted teenagers with Xfinity Mobile. They've got great options, affordable plans, and solid coverage that works for our whole family. With Xfinity Mobile, my daughter can stay connected with me wherever she goes. And did you know when you sign up, you can get an extra phone line free for a full year? Switch to Xfinity Mobile today for more savings, more smiles, and more ways to stay connected.
In Minnesota, we pride ourselves on our nation-leading voter turnout and safe, secure elections. Elections allow us to make our voices heard and stand up for the communities and issues we care about. To exercise your right to vote, first make sure that you are registered to vote. After registering to vote, make a plan to vote on or before Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Learn about how to register to vote, cast your ballot, find your polling place, and more by visiting mnvotes.org.
It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Jones, and in today's episode, we're talking about a unique challenge, the unique challenge of being a firstborn child. Yes, a firstborn child. You're probably wondering, what is unique about being a firstborn child? How does that affect mental well-being? How does that affect emotional health? Well, apparently, a study was recently done that said that being the firstborn child has been linked to anxiety and depressive issues, according to kids as young as 8 years old. And this study was done by a group. It's a firm called Epic, which is a firm that manages a majority of the electronic health records across the United States. And what they did was they studied 182,000 children in the United States who have had well-being visits at the age of 8, and children at that age that had a screening for anxiety by their pediatrician. And what they found was that there was a linkage between the oldest in the family dynamic and anxiety and depressive symptoms. So, according to the research, they said that among the children studied, kids born first amongst their siblings were 48% more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety and 35% more likely to be diagnosed with depression compared to children born second or later. And that made me think, wow, is this true? What evidence do I have, maybe in my own life or people that I know, that this may actually resonate, this may actually connect? And I thought about my own life. I thought about, okay, where am I at in my family dynamic? And I am the oldest. I grew up in a household with all boys. There were 3 of us. It's myself, my brother that's right under me. He's 3 years younger. And then the other brother who's 6 years younger than me. So we're all 3 years apart. And I thought about this and I said, man, why is this? I don't think that the mental health concerns or issues that I had as a kid was linked to me being the oldest per se. It was more linked to the trauma that I experienced around like domestic violence and things of that nature. However, I can understand some of the connection points here when it comes to why an older child or the oldest child, or even sometimes the only child, may have some mental or emotional health concerns. And I thought about, okay, what are some typical features of the oldest or only child? Well, they typically have a pressure of responsibility. Oldest children are usually tasked or assume the role of protector, provider, caretaker of younger siblings. In some cultural groups, it's expected the oldest child takes care of the entire family as they continue to get older. So it's a very interesting dynamic being the oldest child. And myself, I've had that assumed responsibility as well, taking care of my little brothers, showing them how to ride bikes and how to stay out of trouble, defending them, making sure they get to the bus on time and that they're safe, helping them get clothes, showing them how to do things, teaching them about their first video games. There's a lot of things that you do as the oldest child. And I've done a lot of those things. I've been the person who's done a lot of those things to help. So there is this pressure of responsibilities that firstborns take on through very early on in their lives. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the parents influence it, sometimes they don't. But that role model of what a young person's supposed to be or look like in the house is something that young people do have and get in this world. But what does that have to do with their mental and emotional health? How are those two things connected? I thought about, okay, one of the characteristics that we've heard over time in the world of psychology is that the oldest and sometimes only children have issues around perfectionism, doing things the correct way, doing things right. This also pertains to me. One of the things that I always often joke about, I'm like, this was my gift and my curse that my mom passed on to me when I was younger. She used to say, Brandon, if you want to do things correct, do it yourself. If you want to do things right, do it yourself. And when she used to tell me this, it wasn't malicious, but what she was trying to tell me is sometimes the best way to get things done is for you to just do it. And I've been that person and I've had that ingrained in my brain for so long where I just go about life doing things and getting things done. It's helped me become very successful in my own career path, in my own education path as well. But when you get to certain places and spaces, doing things yourself doesn't always work. You have to learn how to delegate. You have to learn how to ask for help. You have to learn how to let things go and not be in control all the time. You have to learn how to share. You have to learn how to do things that you might not have learned effectively as the oldest child. So that level sometimes can reach, a peak of perfectionism, and that perfectionism can lead to a lot of stress and anxiety, and ultimately can lead to burnout in certain situations for people as well. So it is a very important thing to understand and to navigate, is this kind of perfectionism that can take place when you are the oldest child. There is that also that added responsibility as well. Another thing that often happens with oldest is an overachievement of high expectation. So you're the first, you're leading the pack, right? You're the trailblazer, you're setting a tone. You can become an overachiever, or you can have these high expectations because you want to reach a certain level and show a certain piece of yourself for your younger siblings to follow or to admire or to make your parents proud or other people within your family or community. And that can lead to high levels of stress. It can lead to issues of self worth, especially if you don't achieve those things, but you still have the mentality. You may get to a space of self worth issues and concerns. And then that starts to chip away at how you see yourself and your identity, your belief system, and your self esteem, your levels of encouragement, and even accepting or denying encouragement from other people. All those things start to become impacted when you're in this space of being the oldest and the trailblazer. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic that takes place. Another thing that happens as the oldest is sometimes you can find yourself in a space of isolation. You can find yourself lacking social support from other people because you've been the oldest, you've been the trailblazer, you've been the person who's leading and who's moving forward, and you probably learned how to just get things done like I did, all on your own. Which means what? Which means you could be, completely isolated from others. You may feel like you don't have any support. You may repress emotions because you have to show up. You have to show up for your younger siblings. You have to be the role model and help. And sometimes this can even extend to like cousins and things. I think about my own life. We were really close with my cousins, and I'm kind of like their older brother, but I was there for them. I showed up, I assisted, I helped. I repressed my emotions because I can't be down. I can't, lose focus because these young people are depending on me, even though I'm a young person myself. So being a firstborn comes with a honor. It comes with a additional set of duties sometimes to make sure that you're trailblazing and leading the way, setting an example, and caretaking for the younger folks that are around you. It's a very interesting dynamic. So let's talk about some of the strategies, because any podcast I do, I always give some strategies on how we can address any of the issues that show up in our lives. Mental health doesn't have to be a puzzle. It doesn't have to be something that we can't figure out how to work with. It's definitely challenging. It's definitely challenging, and it's not this thing that becomes a easy ABCD kind of step thing to cover. But if you work at it, and if you are honest about it, and if you use strategies, whatever your coping strategies are, you can work through almost any dynamic you find yourself in. So we always love to give strategies here on the It Is Not Your Fault podcast. So let's get into some of the firstborn strategies around mental well-being. The first thing that I recommend is that you have to normalize failure and imperfection. You have to normalize failure and imperfection. Encourage firstborn students to embrace mistakes as a normal part of learning and growth. Emphasize that perfection is neither realistic nor expected, which can help alleviate anxiety related to overachievement. You're not always going to do things well. Everything's not going to be happy go lucky. Everything is not going to go your way. And when it doesn't, you have to understand this is a part of life. Make your failures lessons, and make sure that there are opportunities for you to grow when things don't work out for you. Number two, provide emotional support. Check in regularly with firstborn. So if you're a parent or caregiver, check in with them, see how they're doing, see what they're doing, how they're operating. Because again, some of this is unconscious. Providing that space to engage and understand is very important. Create that safe enough or comfortable enough space to engage around feelings of being the firstborn and what those duties are. And again, the research that we have here said as young as 8 years old. So I would encourage you start having those conversations as early as 8 years old if you have children who are in this dynamic. See what they are enjoying about being an older sibling. See what they're not enjoying about older siblings. See what they need. All these things are important. So providing that emotional support is significant. Number three, balance expectations. Now, this is a hard one. As a parent and caregiver, you can give kind of that boundary and help. But as an individual who struggles with this, it's hard to balance those expectations because it's a part of your nature, it's a part of your character. You want to show up, you want to be the one that folks are dependent on, but you have to measure yourself to the best of your ability. So the recommendation here is be mindful of the expectations placed on firstborns. Avoid comparing them to their siblings if you are a parent or caregiver, if you are the oldest and you are that person, do not compare yourself to your siblings. Uh, and hold yourself to a higher standard simply because you are the oldest. You don't need to do that. You don't need to hold yourself to a higher standard just because you're the oldest. And also, parents, caregivers, you don't need to hold them to a higher standard. And I fall victim of this with my oldest daughter. I have said things to her like, well, you're the oldest and you should know better than them. But at the same time, they both should have an idea of knowing better. It shouldn't just be on one child and not on both. So I usually give equal opportunity accountability when it comes to dealing with my children when they have their disagreements. And yes, naturally, you want to think because you're older, you should understand differently, but that's not always true. Teach healthy coping skills, which we're all about here on the podcast. Introduce techniques such as mindfulness, journaling, and physical activity to help firstborns manage their stress. It's just good tools, good things to do to make sure you're working through your emotions. And then equal attention is one of the most important things we do as parents and caregivers for young people. Is and within the family dynamic, sometimes the oldest can get lost, especially once they get a little older. They're off doing their own thing, they're independent. Give them equal attention. They will need that love, they need that affirmation, and they need that encouragement just like anyone else. So make sure you continue to receive the attention you need and the support and the affection. If you're an oldest, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. And if you're a parent and caregiver, make sure you're offering attention, support, and affection to those oldest children. And then avoid over relying on them as caregivers to the younger siblings, which can contribute to their emotional strain. So, parents and caregivers, you don't need to put that additional strain on the oldest. Yes, should they help out here and there? Absolutely. But it doesn't become their role and responsibility fully. It's a shared duty amongst the family dynamic. So, with that, we're going to get close to wrapping up the podcast. I found this article interesting. I will post this article and my response to this article in our Facebook group. Our Facebook group. All you have to do to find us is type in "It's Not Your Fault" podcast in the search bar. You'll find us. Go ahead and like us there. You'll find my responses to articles, the actual articles themselves, and post from our actual podcast there. And you can engage with other folks as well. So that's one way to connect. The second way to connect is at my personal website, www.jegna.org. That's jegna.org. And you can get to me directly, ask me questions. You can submit your questions there and also figure out what I'm up to these days. And then the third place you can connect with us, if you like this podcast, you'll probably like the other ones we have in our network. The network is ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com, where you'll find me and a bunch of other awesome podcasters doing quality work and helping you navigate through this thing we call life. So with that, folks, we're going to wrap up the podcast today. Again, I'm Brandon Jones. This is It Is Not Your Fault podcast. I want you to do three things: be safe, be constructive, and be well, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
To check out previous episodes of It's Not Your Fault, or to learn more about Brandon Jones, log on to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
COVID-19 cases are on the rise, and peak flu season is almost here. Save time and get the updated COVID-19 vaccine and your flu shot at the same time at Hy-Vee. Schedule your updated COVID-19 vaccine and flu shot online today, or just stop by any Hy-Vee pharmacy whenever it's convenient for you. No appointment necessary. Plus, when you get your flu shot at Hy-Vee, earn a 20-cent fuel saver. Your Hy-Vee pharmacy is here to help you and your family stay healthy.
The November election is coming, and adults with autism, you are eligible to participate. As long as you're 18 by November 5th, a U.S. citizen, and have no restrictions to court order, you can exercise your precious right to vote. There are many ways Minnesota makes this process comfortable for you. Right now, you can vote in person at an early voting center. Early voting centers are less busy in this time leading up to Election Day, which means fewer lines and activities. That may make you feel more comfortable. Or you can request an absentee ballot and vote by mail. That's right. You can cast your ballot without leaving your home. You can also vote without leaving your car. If you choose curbside voting on Election Day on November 5th, election judges will bring your ballot right to your vehicle. Once you mark it, they'll put it in the ballot box for you. Make your plan to make your voice heard this election season. Your vote counts. You can learn more at mnvotes.gov. That's mnvotes.gov.